Hi everyone, it's Mrs. D here. We just finished our discussion of metabolism and the role that enzymes play in metabolic processes. And the main focus of that chapter was all about energy. We discussed catabolic and anabolic processes, exergonic and endergonic reactions. We discussed spontaneous reactions and how enzymes lower the activation energy of reactions. We are now about to discuss cellular respiration, one of the main processes that occur within cells that generates the energy that cells need to do the work that they need to do. And what work do they need to do? Well, we know we can classify all the work that cells have to do into three main categories. They do chemical work, they do transport work, and they do mechanical work, okay? But what type of energy do cells need to do this work? Well, it's a special form of energy, and we learned about that molecule in the last chapter as well. It's energy in the form of ATP. And we know about the structure of that molecule and why it holds or harnesses so much energy, okay? But right now we're going to start with our discussion of cellular respiration, the process that actually generates that molecule. This process is occurring inside of cells, and before we start our discussion though, let's look at the big picture of where we are in terms of ecosystems, okay? So this box represents an ecosystem, and notice if we keep things simple and just think about matter and energy, you'll notice that matter is cycling within this ecosystem, but energy is flowing through the ecosystem. So energy enters ecosystems in the form of light or radiant energy from the sun, and certain organisms, autotrophs or photosynthetic organisms, can capture that light energy and transform carbon dioxide and water, this type of matter, into glucose and oxygen, another type of matter. This type of matter, the glucose and oxygen, then can be used by all organisms to generate ATP. And it's this molecule right here that is the focus of this chapter, because it is that molecule that can actually do the work that cells need to do, okay? But in the big picture, in the big scheme of things, this process of cellular respiration, breaking down glucose using oxygen into carbon dioxide and water, and in the process generating heat and ATP, energy, is linked to this other process called photosynthesis, okay? So this is the big picture. So now let's just focus on cellular respiration, breaking down glucose to form ATP. Cellular respiration is a catabolic process, which means it's a breakdown process and it's an energy releasing process. How much energy is actually released in this process? 686 kilocalories per mole of glucose, okay? Notice it's an exergonic reaction. It releases energy. Delta G is less than 0. How is this energy created, okay? The key to cellular respiration is oxidation of the organic molecule, glucose, that generates the energy. And how does that happen? What does oxidation mean? You should know this from chemistry. Oxidation of glucose, or of organic compounds. Oxidation is loss of electrons. The glucose molecule loses electrons in the form of hydrogen atoms. And this generates or creates the ATP that cells need to do their work, okay? How does this happen? I mean, it's pretty impressive. Well, when you transfer electrons from atoms with high potential energy to lower potential energy. So let's talk about energy. We learned all about different types of energy in the last chapter, but when an electron is transferred from an atom and the potential energy of that electron drops from high potential energy to low potential energy, energy is released in the process. Well, why would the potential energy drop? Well, if it's going to an atom, if the electron is being transferred to an atom that is a more stable state for that electron, then energy will be released. And this is what's happening. This is the key to cellular respiration. Electrons are transferring from these organic compounds, specifically glucose, and they are being transferred along the way in this process, and we'll get to the details later, but they're being transferred, and in the transfer process generate ATP, okay? So oxidation, in order to understand oxidation, you also have to understand reduction. And when I was younger, I learned in chemistry this little trick, and Leo the lion says grr. So loss of electrons is oxidation. The organic compounds are losing electrons, but that implies that some other molecule has to gain these electrons. Gain of electrons is reduction. So molecules are being oxidized and reduced in this process of cellular respiration. Which ones are getting oxidized and which ones are getting reduced, we're going to talk about. But this is just, again, big picture, big overview, that it is the electron transfer that is the key to this process. Electrons going from a high energy state to a low energy state, going from atom to atom, then releases energy and generates ATP. And it is this molecule, and only this molecule, that can perform the work that cells need to do. Okay? So now, if we look at the process of cellular respiration, the whole reaction, this is a summary of the reaction. So there's many other molecules that are formed in the process, intermediate molecules. But this is the overall reaction. One glucose molecule plus 6 molecules of oxygen are transformed into 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, 6 molecules of water, plus energy. What type of energy? Well, energy in the form of heat plus ATP. ATP, okay? Heat energy is a waste product, really. It's released into the environment. But ATP is the molecule we are focusing on. This is the molecule that can be used by the cell to do work. Okay, so if we think oxidation and reduction here, which molecules are being oxidized, which molecules being reduced? Well, it's glucose, oxidation of organic molecules. Oxidation, glucose is being oxidized. It is losing electrons. It is losing electrons in the form of hydrogen atoms. These hydrogen atoms are lost. Well, where are they going? Well, they're transferring to oxygen. The oxygen is being reduced. It is gaining the electrons that the glucose molecule is losing. Now, I just want to point out here that it could be any organic molecule that's being oxidized here. We know that lipids contain energy, complex carbs, but we're keeping it simple in this chapter and just focusing on the glucose molecule. So glucose is being oxidized, it's losing electrons in the form of hydrogen atoms, and this molecule will then actually transform or oxidize and become carbon dioxide. Oxygen, on the other hand, is gaining electrons. It is being reduced, and it becomes the water molecules. So oxidation and reduction are both occurring within this process. This is the overview of cellular respiration. And we're now going to go into detail how this